So on today, ladies and gentlemen, as you all are watching this video, whether it be morning, noon, or night, Dr. Allison Henderson Brooks is going to encourage you on how to effectively encourage your church in this day and time. How are you doing, Dr. Brooks?
I am doing well, Brother Rollins. It's a joy to be in your presence. You are a living legend among those of us in this preaching game. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you today. Bless you. Bless you. Thank you so much, Brother Rollins. You know, this topic is intriguing to me because I believe that in order to pastor, you've got to have joy. And it can't be a manufactured joy. It has to be a genuine joy, not just for the work, but for the people. Hospitality is certainly one of my spiritual gifts. I did it for 12 years for a living in the hospitality industry with strangers. And it really is something that is at the core of who I am, that ensuring that people know that they are seen, that they're heard, that they're valued, and that their voice matters, right? And so those are some of the approaches that I take. As a pastor, I'm coming up to my third year. When I got the call, it is the oldest Black Baptist church in North Georgia. We're about to celebrate 158 years in existence. We still have the original bell that sits atop our building that was welded by the skilled hands of emancipated enslaved persons in 1867. We still have the original wooden floors. I mean, we still have some of the original artifacts and Bibles and rolls, right? Rolls and rosters of those folks. And so with historic churches, there certainly comes, I say, a reckoning with not just who we were, but who we are supposed to be. And so upon assuming the role of pastor there, we had a mortgage. And the very first thing that I asked in my interview was, what's the plan to eliminate the mortgage? And it stunned our church because they weren't necessarily thinking about that. They said, well, you're the first person that's asked us about that. It's like, listen, I'm a numbers person. Not only do I do people management, we do finance, I do performance analytics. And to start to walk with them and to encourage them in this season was, one, to draw on the rich history of who we once were, to build on the vision on who God is calling us to be in this season. And so it's a tremendous church, tremendous folk who literally held the line. I never will forget one of my mentors in the faith said, whenever you go into a new situation and to a new church, you must always honor the people that have kept the doors open before you even got there. Right. That you've got to understand that there is some embedded knowledge and history and how to and administration that is taking place, no matter how unsophisticated or antiquated or whatever it might be. It was sufficient enough to keep the doors open and to run it before you got there. And so I honored the lifelong history. I've got 12 members that have been there their whole lives, and they're all over 80. Okay. So they've seen the church from its height to its decline. And now, thanks be to God, we are starting to increase again. And so how do you effectively encourage people? One, you have to be genuine. Change happens at the speed of trust, but growth happens at the speed of connection. Okay. Wow. Change happens at the speed of trust, but growth happens at the speed of connections. You know, I went old school. I went to the homes of my deacons and my trustees. We went out to lunch, right? And to dinner. I allowed them to know me. And one of the things that they quickly found out is I am who I am. And I'm always the same. No matter who I'm around, you're always going to get the same high touch energy. But I also had to deliver some quick wins, right? One example that comes to mind is historically, before assuming the pastorate there, our church was about a $60,000 a year grossing church. So that's $5,000 a week, right? Maybe $5,600, $6,000 on a good month, right? To bring in that kind of income for the year. My very first Sunday as pastor, we raised $30,000. And so I knew we needed a quick win. And so I called together some of my friends and old co-workers and folks who had supported the ministry to give on my first Sunday. And from that Sunday on, we never missed a beat. And so because they saw it, They heard it. They experienced it. We had 15 new people join that very first Sunday. Everything else about the vision that the Lord had given me to roll out was now tangible because they had seen, if you will, to use a language of the Bible, they'd eaten the fruit therein. They had seen it. They tasted it, that it was good. Right. And we've just been able to move forward. And we closed my first year raising $237,000 in 1 year. We closed my second year at $475,000 raising in tithes and offerings. And we cleared the $266,000 mortgage that the church had carried 35 years. And I'm 43. So they carried this mortgage most of my life. And from those individual, I did what I said I was going to do. I built those relationships. I had constant communication. I took pulse checks. I did not make any drastic changes that would necessarily affect what my congregation thought was meaningful. However, we did make transformative and drastic shifts on things that I knew had to be done, i.e. building stuff, right? We needed a new roof. We needed to paint the inside of the church. People want to come to a church that looks good on the inside, right? We reupholstered the pews. I did a stone wall. I mean, we really did some upgrades to the church to do that. And we also continue to grow. And so my three takeaways: one, you got to build a relationship. Two, they have to learn how to trust you and you have to learn how to trust them. But three, you have to over communicate, right? Most of our elders in our churches, they know what it's like to pay off their house, right? But it's very difficult when you're trying to, when you talk about $500,000 or $1 million for them to fathom that. And so you constantly communicate. And when you check off an item list on what you promised them that you were going to do, or that you all agreed in the church, that you do it, and you tell them and show them how you've done it so that you can move on. Because one thing I know about Black Baptist churches, we love a project. We
Amen.
love to win. Okay. And so if you keep projects on the burner, then folks they love their church, right? They want to continue to see their church grow. And when you keep checking off these projects, folks will continue to want to work. And so those are just, long answer to your short question about how you effectively communicate with a congregation. But it's mutuality, it's joy, it's genuine, it's authentic, it's intentional, right? And it's reciprocity. They said yes to a senior pastor who our bylaws say that a woman cannot be a pastor. And in reciprocity to that, it's my baby, right? And they are instantly my family. And I'm going to do everything that God has equipped me to do to make sure not just we survive, but that we thrive and we flourish doing the work that God has assigned to our hands so that we can continue to add to the rich history of our church.
That is just so amazing. Just hearing your story about the Hill First Baptist Church of Athens, Georgia, and also, regarding encouraging our churches effectively. I do want to ask you this about encouragement. How do we encourage the disencouraged that come into the church but still want to be stuck in discouragement of the church going forward?
Well, it's a lot to be discouraged about in our national climate and our political climate. Our folks, Black folk, I'm not going to say black and brown, I'm going to say Black, because I do think that those are, even though they're intersectional identities, they are separate, right? And our own suffering. But Black folk are beat down every other place we go. And the last place that you ought to be beat down is in the church. Right. And so you will never hear anything from our pulpit, from me or any of my associate pastors demanding that the people do something other than keep their faith, right? We have an open door policy. That's something that is absolutely new. Like, you don't have to be a member of my church to join my church. But I think pastoring, I am certain that pastoring in this season doesn't just require your intuition about God's word and the way in which you can explicate it in a way that's accessible, but it is also about how do we use the data to tell us what people are expecting. And so, for example, a data point. Now, Formerly, right, the women did all the hard work. They would clean, they would cook, they would prepare, right, the communion table, they would tithe. If there was a fundraiser, you knew you were going to go to the women's ministry, because the women's ministry was going to fundraise and outdo everybody, because that's just what we do. Well, women now that are making over six figures are very busy, whether they're single or they're married. And so time is not an expendable commodity in this season. However, being connected to a cause that's important to them will get you a longer runway. So for example, I've got, older millennial women in my church who are doing extremely well. They pay their tithes online, but I might see them once every 3 months. However, if I have a special event, right, or if I have a ladies gathering, or if I'm saying, hey, we're going to go feed the college students on the second and third Sunday, guess what they're going to do? They're going to carve out time. They're going to say, Pastor, we'll do all the planning. We'll do all the legwork. We'll show up because I'm really committed to young people. And this is what we're going to do. And so how do we, sometimes that is a way in which to alleviate the discouragement, because 9 times out of 10, when I talk to them, they have had some have been traumatic, but others have been discouraging instances when they've tried to join a ministry at other churches that they were once a part of. And so we have an open door policy. You can be as active as you want to, or you can be as chill as you want to, and you do not have to be a member of our church. And so I pastor about 6 blocks away from UGA. I see about 45 to 50 college students. I know that it's a transient ministry, that they are only with me for about 4 years. And so they are committed. They are dedicated. We started about a year ago giving them $25 Visa gift cards every Sunday. And from our feed, we have people that are not members of our church that say, hey, Pastor, I'm going to drop $1,000 in the offering today so that you all can take care of the $25 gift cards for the next 3 months. Never step foot in my church, but they give to that cause because they see what we're doing with young people. And when we ran the numbers this past year off those $25 gift cards, those college students contributed $4,756 throughout the course of the year in tithes and offerings to our church. Now, the average gift was $5.50. Mm-hmm. That's a shout right there.
Wow.
That's a shout right there. I have one baby who gives $1.36 every week, but 52 weeks of $1.36 for a college student lets me know that they are engaged, even though they've never walked down to join, but they are in church every Sunday morning. They're on our Bible study in person on campus on Wednesdays, and then on our prayer calls on Tuesdays, and anything else that I ask them to do, that's what they're doing. And so one of them said to me, to answer your question explicitly, what do you do about discouragement? Love, see, hear, and involve, right? Invitation. This is a season of invitation. Invite people. You got to ask for it, right? And folks are waiting for you to ask for it. But you got to be invitational to sort of combat some of the discouragement. Now, I do believe that there are some life challenges that people bring with them that the church is not equipped to be able to handle, right? We can do the best we can, but there are some triggers that will cause people to be perpetually discouraged. And for those folks that can never see the light or never can see joy, I believe that those are deeper seated issues that the church can triage, but we cannot treat. Right. But I do think that you can't hang around joy and still be down, if you will. At some point, that joy is going to get in you.
Subscribe to Brother Rollins Videos for Christ on YouTube. We post brand new content every week with powerful preaching from ministers and pastors all across the nation that seek to encourage people all over the world through the word of Jesus Christ. You will also find gospel songs and old-time hymns that have inspired generations of Christians. Subscribe today and hit the bell so you never miss new content. YouTube.com/Brother Rollins. Spell it. BROTHA Rollins. Brother Rollins Videos for Christ on YouTube.